And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from beautiful downtown Blue Ridge, where we're doing the show at Blue Jeans Pizza. We just want to tell you, because this week we're really going to pump it up. This is our indoor location throughout the fall, winter, and early spring for weather, but we're getting ready to go back first week of May to Sycamore Crossing outside. And I just want to say, every time, the Humane Society of Blue Ridge, we will have our Pet of the Week, and that was my favorite segment. I like this, Dr. Whaley. I'm sorry, my apology, but I loved my Pet of the Week.
Remember, Jane thought she was the Pet of the Week. That was so funny. That was a funny line. I like the Pet of the Week as well.
Well, anyhow, it's time for our Ask the Doc segment with Dr. Whaley, and thank you, Georgia Cancer Specialist. Dr. Whaley, thank you for being here this morning. We were talking a little college basketball in the break. Have you watched any?
Yes, I have. and we're going to have to record one game Saturday night because we're taking out my nurse for her birthday. But we haven't missed any of the. We've watched probably 80% of it, but we've watched all of every game since they got to the Sweet 16.
I have too.
Yeah.
I've watched. Oh man, have I watched? And I'm sorry, Kentucky fans, but Luke May with North Carolina, he's a walk-on.
Yeah.
That kid's a walk-on, and Luke May with North Carolina just hit that thing, left 0.3 of a second on the clock.
Yeah, it's a little shocking, I would say.
Huh?
It was a little shocking, I would say. I saw an article yesterday about Grant Hill throwing the ball to Leitner when it was, it's still called the shot in NCAA basketball, but he has never watched the video of that game. Grant Hill, who threw the ball out, never watched the video of that game because he doesn't want to diminish the power of the instant when it happened.
I forget the guy's name, but here is what I want to say before we move on, because two things. Number one, the team that I am shocked is gone is Kansas.
Yeah. Everybody else is too.
Because Kansas, up to this last game, they were putting on a show.
Yeah, 95, 100
Yeah, they
points.
were putting on a show. And then this last game, it's just like, who's this team that showed up? But that's the thing in athletics is you never know what team's going to show up.
A long time ago, I told you that the difference between Michael Jordan and the rest of the NBA was a 1/10 of a second and an 1/8 of an inch. And we use the example of the swimming in the Olympics. And so you've really watched it here. You've seen teams that are good teams, but they're 7 seeds and whatever, and they're not Kansas, and they're not Villanova, and yet they win basketball games. And that's really because the talent level, except for these guys that are 1 and out, is so close that there's a mixture or something that happens that you can't really explain.
Well, before we get to our question, I knew if I said basketball, this would continue, but how could this go wrong if you're talking basketball? What I watched through the tournament, and this is just my judgment, is when you have a team that has 7-8 seconds on the clock, they have an opportunity to win, I'm just going to call it, you get what I call a player gets selfish, wants to go down, determined to make the shot, determined to be that one on TV, to score that, those teams lose. North Carolina, 5 seconds left, 6 seconds left, I forget the guy's name. They knew what to do, they stayed focused, they went down, and the guy that passed the ball to May, I forget his name, Luke May, obviously he knew this is my hot hand. And all that happened in just split seconds.
Hundreds of a second.
He knew this is my hot hand. This is my best chance. And he wasn't selfish.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about, and I apologize, I don't remember the guy's name. When we talked about Luke May this past week, the guy to me is the guy that wasn't selfish, that knew this was my hot hand.
That's right. Well, that gets me into talking about Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew, okay. I'm interested on how this went to Mountain Dew.
Well, all right. So we're getting into Mountain Dew because, you get the drug IV. That guy that wants to run down the court, maybe he's the guy that had the extra Red Bull before the game or during the quarter and is a little bit hyped or stimulated, beyond the guys that didn't. But you remember when we were talking about performance, that people drink caffeine to get cranked up to be able to play. Sometimes early in the game, you look at those guys and you think that's like a bunch of lab rats. Those guys are running around so fast that they've got to be hyped up on something. And by the time the game gets over, conditioning and nutrition and all the rest of that stuff begin to show. And I think it's those teams that are really well conditioned and well trained and well disciplined who perform the way you comment, that they're not wasting their energy.
Well, basketball, which I enjoy all sports, baseball, obviously you're not exuding a great amount of pressure when you're waiting for that pitcher to throw the ball. You're in a relaxed state, waiting for the play, and you're in the play only if it's hit, and so it could be slow. Football, you have that momentary break between each play, but basketball's up and down the court.
Like hockey.
Don't get me on hockey, because hockey, I say those guys strap those skates on, and those are the physical guys.
Yeah, they are.
Those are the physical guys that get up and push those skates up and down the ice. I better not get started on
It's
hockey.
all right. Well, we got a few things that this can bring us into, and we'll stay away from turmeric for a minute. The parents, I hear from the parents. The parents are interested in several things. We've been discussing basketball. We brought up last week, didn't have time, the issue, don't you do that to me. I always turn that thing off too.
That's
there
okay.
We go.
That happens.
That happens. We talked about head injuries for our kids last week, remember. There was an article that came out I had discussed last week that the people who had the highest degree of head injuries in high school athletics and in the type of athletics that we were talking about here, you had the baseball coach and everything here, are girls soccer. Not football, not any other boys sport, but girls soccer. Well, this week, a study came out that was very interesting. If you watched the Super Bowl, you saw a commercial about the Dartmouth football coach and the Dartmouth football team, which is my college, where they do not have any tackle or contact practices in the entire season. And you saw that mechanical thing that ran around that they tackled a dummy that was computer generated and runs around and acts like people. So they have in that entire season from spring practice and everything else, the players never hit each other, never tackle. They only tackle a dummy. They only hit during a game. And that sort of activity the NCAA has picked up on, and they have a program called Safe Tackling. And that program was started about, I think, 4 years ago, and 3 high schools in the country did it experimentally. It's now in 7,000 high schools and little leagues and whatever you call this, Sandlot League football, where they teach them how to safely tackle, not going with the head, but leading with the shoulder. And they've made rules where, about the head-to-head and all that in college sports and professional sports. But they've dramatically reduced the number of head injuries. And so when we encourage our children to participate in our local athletics here, and I think they do a good job of it, every single Little League team and Little League organization is now supposed to have at least one coach who's a graduate of that program of how to safely tackle. So talking about basketball and talking about what the people out there tell me they're interested in, yes, I think it's safe to let our kids play sports. And I keep hearing, well, you played football and your mind's not all there. You hear these professional NFL players say, well, my kid's not going to play football. And they really ask me, since I'm supposed to know something about sports athletics, is it safe for my child to play? And my partner asked me that. And I think the answer is definitely yes, because in our community, I'm confident that we have trained coaches that teach the kids proper technique and how to protect themselves into that discussion.
Well, I do know that's an ongoing research and discussion on how to play sports and be safe at the same time, and physically you know, with the head injury. So I do know that youth football is, the sign up on youth football is dwindling year after year.
Right.
Basically with a lot of fears that I think parents have of their kids with head injuries and so forth. So
I'm not going to argue about people doing it because it certainly is still that study that came out about the reduction in the amount of concussions. It lowered the concussions by over a third, and it increased by greater than 40% the speed with which people recovered from concussions. But still, the #1 sport for concussions in non-college, below college, is still girls soccer and not boys football. And so the sign up for soccer is going up because parents have been led to believe that it's safer for their children to play soccer than it is for their children to play football. And they are encouraging their boys to play soccer rather than football. And that's my grandchildren in the same way. But the concussion frequency in children below the age of college is higher in girls soccer than it is in boys football. And it's going down in boys football because of the techniques I just discussed.
Question, what did you, now this supplement, what's the name of this?
Turmeric.
Turmeric. The question this week, is turmeric a good, safe supplement? You're gonna have to tell me what turmeric is.
All right.
And is it true it can be given to patients with an IV? What is turmeric?
Okay, turmeric. When you eat curry, it has a yellow color. That yellow color is turmeric. This is a herb that is grown mostly in Asia because it requires temperatures in the 90s and up close to 100 to grow. But every time you eat margarine, butter, or anything that's got a yellow color to it in industry, food industry, that's the color that is used primarily to color stuff. But it's in our natural foods, we get it from curry and meals of that sort. It's like everything else. I said here a few weeks ago when we were talking about something, just remember zinc deficiency and remember the chronic yeast syndrome, and everybody attributes everything. We were talking about gluten, and the truth about gluten is a tiny little sliver, and the miracle of turmeric, there are about 40 conditions from dandruff to athlete's foot that the industry would tell you that turmeric is good for. As a supplement, you can take it as an oil, you can take it as a powder, and you can take it in capsule form. All forms of it in food, where you eat it in curry or you make it in other recipes, saffron rice or all these other things, are 100% safe. The amounts that are there are amounts that people are getting the turmeric in their natural environment in India and Ceylon and in the Indian subcontinent where they eat it all the time. And then the health benefits are sort of extrapolated from things they don't have very badly. In experimental conditions, it's only been shown to be possibly helpful, possibly, and that's the data's poor, in people who have chronic itching, people who have osteoarthritis because of its inflammatory process, and as a very tiny adjunct to lower cholesterol in obese people, not lower cholesterol in people with a high family history of cholesterol. And then that other long list, and I actually brought it, it's 3 pages long of stuff, neurodegenerative conditions and bacterial and viral infections, the evidence it doesn't help a thing. So basically, yes, it's safe. And then the part about giving it IV is it has been used, people used to go to Tijuana, Mexico to take Laetrile to cure cancer. Turned out to be a hoax. The drug was given IV. Well, nobody recommends you give an apricot pit IV, but that's how it was given. And in a couple of clinics of these for-profit natural clinics where they give chelation therapy and so forth, it has been given intravenously, and nobody in the scientific community recommends that it be done. there.
I'm really looking forward to
Eat the curry.
Eat the curry.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this next question because I'm very interested in this. I'm going to say personally myself, and I'm glad for this question that we have. If you ever have a question for Dr. Whaley throughout the week, you could send that to us. Email it chief@fetchernews.com. Find us on Facebook, fetchernews.com, or our website, chief@fetchernews.com, and send us a question. If you have a good results from your test labs come back, good results. Cholesterol levels are good, your triglycerides are good. Does this mean you will be less likely to have blockage?
Correct.
So if you go do the blood work and everything comes back, cholesterol's good, and your LDLs, is it, or cells, what all?
Right, the LDL's low, the HDL's high, blood pressure is
Does that mean
controlled.
you're less likely to have blockage?
It does. It does. There are three pieces of the cholesterol puzzle. There's other things in the puzzle. So let's leave family history out of it. People who had heart attacks in their 40s and were said to be thin and non-smokers, and farmers are exercised pretty well, and you don't know about their cholesterol. So the old number that we used to hang on was total cholesterol. That's before we recognized that there were two pieces of it. So if your cholesterol was high, it was generally associated with a higher incidence of coronary disease, stroke, or peripheral vascular disease, and pain in the leg. Once they discovered that there were two other pieces of it, the total became less important than the LDL, which is the harmful one, and how much HDL there was. So if you had a high cholesterol that was made up mostly of harmful LDL, then you had a much higher chance of having stroke, heart attack, or peripheral vascular disease than people who had a high cholesterol made up of more HDL. It used to be that we said that the LDL was normal at 150. That number got lowered about 20 years ago to 130, and now the number's gone down to 100. So I've said before, you can't be too rich, too thin, or too good looking. So you can't have too low an HDL. Flip over to the protective HDL, and that's the good one. You can't be too rich, too thin, too good looking, or have too high an HDL. So if you have your numbers are all good. Now, if they say your total cholesterol is good, that's not much of a benefit. If they tell you your LDL is at 100 or below, that's nice. But if they tell you your HDL is 60 or 70 or even higher than that, then you've won the lottery.
I'm going to ask a personal question since we're talking about cholesterol, and this question came in. Every time Dr. Tidman is here, we usually cover men's health or get into men's health, and I want to ask this question. I went this week, and this is for Mr. I got to actually text him and tell him I went and did everything, because he just always tries to encourage every man out there, go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. So I go once a year, blood work, an annual checkup. And the other day, tell me what they're listening to when they do the stethoscope, and why they're listening to both sides of my neck.
Okay. This up here's a brain. It's got two big arteries that feed it in front, two little bitty arteries in back that you can't feel and you can't listen to. And what they're listening for here is rough flow caused by partial obstruction. And if you're going to a doctor who is listening to your neck, you can take it to the bank. You're going to a guy who's checking you over well, because the average guy, the average doctor, doesn't do that thorough of a job. So they're listening to partial obstruction. You can't listen to partial obstruction in the heart. You can only get that by history, that you're having chest pain with exercise, an EKG, which is abnormal and shows that blood flow may not be like it could be, or put you on a treadmill and show that when you've been there 6 minutes, you got to get off because your blood flow is poor. But the way to check this, sort of the poor man's way of checking this, is to listen. If you hear something that doesn't sound right, then the next level of testing is to go over and get an ultrasound, which is a non-invasive test. And then if the ultrasound is abnormal, then there's ways of looking at it with contrast and dye.
What are they listening to on my back?
and listening to your lungs.
Lungs? Well,
Yeah, how well are you aerating, and are your lung? You got any noises back there that say you're smoked too many cigarettes, or you got asthma, or something like that? So when they listen along the side, listen in the front,
I noticed they didn't have cigars
breathe.
on the list. I was lucky about that.
Yeah, and then they listen in the back, they're listening to your lungs, and when they're listening right here, they're listening to your heart. And if they go down there and put their hands in your groin right above your legs, they're trying to do the same thing they're doing here by listening, by feeling down there to see that you've got a good blood flow to your legs.
Well, I was given an all clear. He checked both. I knew we had the two major arteries, but I was wondering, what is he really listening for? But he said both were good. He says
hold your breath, otherwise you're listening to your breathe and not listening to the thing.
He said that was very good. So I wanted to check that.
But what did he say about your weight?
He didn't say anything.
No, he said something about your
No,
weight.
he didn't. I told you I was going to ask a personal question. I didn't say I said I'm going.
You didn't tell me to ask a
I said I'm going to ask a personal question. I didn't say give.
Come back again. All right.
You know what I say. If you put yourself out there, you got to be prepared.
You do, absolutely, absolutely. I'm with you.
Well, I understand that. So I haven't, and I haven't gotten the blood work back. I haven't gotten the blood work back. But my concern is, even if you have good cholesterol, could you still have some blockages?
Yes, you can.
When I see that question,
you asked basically the cholesterol package. I said set aside the family history and some other things. So let's say you've got great cholesterol, but you smoke. Or you have a family history of premature coronary disease that isn't particularly related to weight or to cholesterol, because there are a few other things that can cause you to have coronary disease. A homocysteine level, rare, not a big deal. But there is something about family history where you can make blockage with a good cholesterol. It just so happens that's a tiny fraction of all the heart disease. So we're talking in terms of the majority, not that rare 5 out of 1,000 cases that occur in people with very good cholesterol, normal blood pressure, no other risk factors that we know of, and they have heart disease. And that generally is a familial trait that we don't understand. You like a doctor to say we don't understand? Or we don't know? I want everybody to write it down and put it in your diary. When Dr. Whaley says, I don't know, it's a rare event, but that's,
hey, you know what? I respect that. If you don't know, there you go. Let me ask this, because before we wrap up, you're always, and I don't know if you brought anything today, but you're always keeping up with the current publications and what's new, and a report that maybe we out here haven't heard about, or anything out there that we ought to...
Well, what I'm trying to do is, so when you walk through the checkout line at the grocery store and you see the National Enquirer and it says new blood test detects cancer, you might see that next week, because there, as I've mentioned here before, there are blood tests, or there are tests being worked on experimentally now that look at genetic markers. And they announced earlier in the week that there is a new blood test that will be, if it ever gets to the market, it's going to be years from now, that will pick up a genetic marker for smoldering lung cancer way before it's big enough to be detected by a CAT scan. So it's not ready for prime time yet, and when you see it at the checkout counter, don't go rushing over here to the doctor and tell him you want to have the blood test. But be encouraged that some of the research that's going on will lead to blood tests that'll save you from biopsies and CAT scans and things of that sort.
Okay.
You don't want to talk about Red Bull and alcohol, huh?
What about Red Bull and alcohol? Oh my gosh, what do you mean?
Well, we started out with the Mountain Dew, but the Red Bull and alcohol.
No, there's not a better way to close than just let's talk about. I want to talk about Red Bull and alcohol.
Well, it was the superintendent of schools that got me thinking about it. There was a study that was put out this week, primarily Canadian, because in Canada they did not allow Red Bull or any of these energy drinks to be sold with caffeine in them. So Mountain Dew and Red Bull and everything else was non-caffeinated in Canada until 2 years ago, when the industry lobbied them and they now let them have caffeine in them. Well, there's young people, college-age people, or people who are drinking under the age of 21, drink a drink that is alcohol plus Red Bull or any other Monster or any other stimulant. And a lot of the advertising is subliminal, but they're advertising to encourage that. Now, in the U.S., they used to actually market energy drink alcohol in the same drink. It's against the law now. But they've learned that in the college age group and that young age group, people who drink Red Bull and alcohol feel like they can drink a whole lot more alcohol and not get high. It's the stimulant of the caffeine that makes them feel that way, but they're actually impaired the exact same amount from the alcohol as they would be if they didn't have the Red Bull. And it's increased kind of dramatically the emergency room visits for atrial fibrillation, for sexual assault on campus, for automobile accidents and everything else. And some of the incidents that seems to show that these exercising poor judgment, like you would do under alcohol, has gone up because people are adding Red Bull or something to the alcohol and consuming more and think that they have better control than they actually have. So that's the Red Bull alcohol story.
Final four. Have you picked the team? Now, brackets, we obviously don't have time to talk about how our brackets have been busted. We might have to do a whole show on that.
No, but I don't think it's going to be a West Coast Final Two. And I really would like to see North Carolina win. I'm an ACC guy. I told you off the air, I'm an ACC guy. Early in the tournament, the teams that I wanted to win and get far were Kentucky, North Carolina, and Gonzaga because of my brother. Now, I wouldn't say that I didn't think Kansas was going to be there. I thought Villanova was going to be there.
I made some family picks. I will admit.
It's not a pick. It's not a pick. It's not a pick because I don't think they were going to win. But I enjoyed watching.
I picked Michigan because of family. I did not want my family to get. I'm North Carolina. I think just for the interest of the game, it may be fun to have North Carolina, South Carolina. It could just be for the interest of viewership in the game.
I think so. And as I said, I don't think there would be any interest in watching a West Coast final. But I do think there would be a tremendous amount of interest in watching an SEC, ACC final from the two Carolinas. Then we get to talking about the restroom thing and moving all of the NCAA moving everything out of North Carolina because of the restroom controversy and into South Carolina and cutting North Carolina off at the legs. I mean, the NCAA did that, the NFL did that, the NHL did that. They all did that in a politically correct way. I mean, I'm still mad about that.
Okay.
So now we got from basketball to politically correct to the bathroom controversy.
We could we want to thank Dr. Whaley. We especially want to thank Georgia Cancer Specialist for this segment every Friday morning at around 8:20. We are at Blue Jeans Pizza in Blue Ridge, Georgia. We're going to take a brief break. When we come back, you can find this segment on our YouTube channel. That's FYN-TV, Fetcher News YouTube channel. You can find this on FetcherNews.com under our health segment. If you go to community and scroll down, community and lifestyle, we have a health section there, and you can find it there on FetcherNews.com. We always appreciate it. If you have a question for Dr. Whaley, you can send that to us. Chief@FetcherNews.com, 706-889-9700. We'll be back after these brief messages, and it's time to talk maybe a little politics with the All-Star panel. Be back after this. Sam, take us a break.